Good afternoon, happy Savage Saturday, keepers of the cash. Gary B, the Casual Comic Guy here. Today, guys, we're here to talk about the Conan Prototype and Chamber of Darkness issue 4. Now, I've brought this book up before on my channel. I think it's good for another review. I'm 1,000+ subscribers later, and it's a book I think that's important to the history of Conan the Barbarian for many reasons. One, this was a prototype that proved Barry Windsor Smith's worth as a Conan artist. And Conan was not the first choice of Marvel to be their barbarian. Thongor was. Stan Lee liked the name Thongor a lot better. He thought it was much more dramatic. He actually found the name Conan a little bit boring, and it didn't have the same pop for Stan Lee that it has for everybody else, right? But the people that had the rights to Thongor, they wanted more money than Marvel was willing to pay per issue. And Glenn Lord, who was the head of the Conan properties at the time, was a man with a great vision, right? He was in charge of Robert E. Howard's works, and he wanted to bring more and more and younger audiences as well that were just getting into reading. But he wanted to bring audiences that had never heard of Robert E. Howard over to Robert E. Howard's many stories, many published works, and of course Conan the Barbarian, which was the #1 seller. So he struck the deal with Roy Thomas in Marvel Comics for the reduced rate that they got it from, and thus history was made, right? It worked out brilliantly. I mean, I know it worked for me because I found Robert E. Howard through the Conan comics of Marvel. And I don't know how long it would have been before I found Robert E. Howard. I'm sure I would have at some point, but this certainly hastened it. And I think for a lot of people that were reading comics at the time, they did find Robert E. Howard through the Conan comics. How could this character not capture your imagination? Now, they wanted to tap, Roy Thomas did at least, John Buscema as the Conan artist. But John was too expensive at the time to put on this new comic that hadn't been proven, and so he couldn't get the approval for John Buscema to do the art duties on it. Thus, he suggested to Stan Lee a young Barry Windsor Smith, who was still doing some work for Marvel, but he didn't have a green card yet, and he had just ended up having to go back to England, and they needed something to prove that Barry Windsor Smith could draw and put out a Conan book. Thus, Star the Slayer, which Roy Thomas and Barry Windsor Smith collaborated on. When I open this up and show you, you're going to see that Star the Slayer looks exactly like the Barry Windsor Smith Conan. This is the prototype. A different name, sure, because they didn't have the Conan properties yet. A cool story, and we're going to get into it. It's only 7 pages long. It's a great book, a great piece of Conan history, and just another one of those things where events lined up, and we have this long history of Conan now, thanks to certain things falling in line. So let's take a look. First, we'll show you the cover. And of course, I'm going to put stuff over here for you guys. So I got the cover up over there now. We're going to let it sit a second. Of course, I'm going to hold up the book because I love to do it. All right, it's the way I interact with you guys. I just put it in a fresh bag, new board, because I haven't read it in a while. So I took it out to read it again. And it's always a joy. Great cover. Cover art by Marie Severin. And just a beautiful piece of work. All right, so we got a few stories in here, but we are going to switch to the back, the Sword and the Sorceress. All right, and you're going to see right away the very recognizable pencils of Barry Windsor Smith. So here we go. Look at that. I mean, how incredible is that? What an opening page, right? So on this first page, you see Star the Slayer, and he's doing what the barbarians of the time do, right? And what the Conan prototype would do, as Conan did, is curse the gods as he's fighting to save his kingdom, all right? And he is the ruler of the city of Zardath. And this says, the Chronicles of Zardath are what chronicle his adventures, much like the Chronicles of Conan and the Median Chronicles, right? So you can see the similarities already. And so he's fighting a sorcerer. Conan fights sorcerers. So This one happens to be called Trull, Trull. And he says, by all the gods of the great abyss, my mightiest blows have no effect on the fire-breathing man-dragon conjured up by Trull. Yet I must fight on for the city of Zardath. And again, when you're talking about quintessential Conan artists, the quintessential young Conan artist with Conan in his younger years, to me, will always be Barry Windsor Smith. But the man Conan, the adult, the guy who's grown up past his youth, that's always going to be John Buscema to me. All right, so we turn the page and, you know, there's a blinding flash of light and you have, I keep wanting to say Conan, but you have Star the Slayer saying, what madness is this? The man-dragons vanished and the man-dragon has now been replaced by Trull the Wizard, and he stands gigantic in front of our hero Star. And then the man-dragon appears behind him, grabs him in his hand, in his monstrous hand, and he's like a little toy in this man-dragon's hand. As the wizard's casting the spell, he tells the man-dragon to just go ahead and slay Star the Slayer and be done with it. And he is casting the spell with a spell of chaos, and you can, I like that they're putting like letters up there, ones that we don't know. But he's forming a spell in the air. And it's great stuff. At the last second, before there's a screaming fireball coming out of a void towards our hero, Star the Slayer. And he raises up his blade, which he states is a sword that was forged in heaven. And once the fireball hits the blade, it disperses of the man-dragon, and that's gone. Now, Star thinks that Trull is gone too, but he's not. Trull is there when Star gets back up and says, your heathen sword destroyed only the man-dragon, not his creator. And as Trull goes to cast the last spell that's going to destroy Star, Star lets loose his sword and throws it in desperation. And it says, Star the Slayer hurls his broadsword one last lethal time. And then we cut to, at that time, the modern age, right, in the 70s. And you have this author waking up from a nightmare. And he calls his agent. He says, Len Carson here. He goes, yes, I've dreamed up another Star the Slayer classic for that rag you call a magazine. But I just called to say that you won't like the ending, because he plans on killing off Star the Slayer in this last story. So all the Star the Slayer stories come to him through nightmares and dreams. And they're taking their toll on him. And the publisher is telling him that he can't kill him off. He's like, what do you mean I can't do that? I'm the author, baby. I can do anything I want to. You just publish them and let me write them, huh? And then he slams the phone down. And he's, a few hours later, he's on his way to mail out the manuscript. He says hi to a cop on the street who's also reading the stories. And the cop says that he read one the other day. It was really good. And the author goes on to tell him that he is going to stop writing them. And then he goes, that's too bad. I really liked them. And he's like, yeah, they're good enough to knock me out of my gourd. Another nightmare like tonight's, and I go bananas. So he is on the way to deliver a manuscript which will kill Star the Slayer. You see the Star the Slayer over here in his world, but something weird is about to happen. Alright, so as this author's on his way, he turns into another alley, and in that alley, he's kind of reflecting on his life. He's like, I kind of got attached to old Star, though. Funny, I can't help feeling a bit like a murderer. And you see murderer being yelled by Star the Slayer, and the author can't believe it, but this person that he believes he created is standing in front of him, broadsword in hand, horned helmet. And he's like, you, Star? And Star's sitting there is like, assassin, it's Star the Slayer who stands before you. He whom you mean to destroy, but who shall slay you instead. And the author starts arguing, but I created you, I gave you life. You're not real. He goes, no, I'm real. But if you don't believe it, stand still, and this phantom blade can scarcely harm you. And he strikes out at him with his sword, and the author ducks it. He goes, I see, and Star says, ha, I see you have not the courage to test your fine words, wizard. He goes, but soon you shall dodge my biting sword no longer, and then the author says, wait, no, you called me a wizard, but it was Trull who was your magical enemy, not I. And Star calls him a liar, screams it at him. Liar. He goes, you are far worse, far more dangerous than even Troll. Could he have summoned me here to a land whose Titan towers dwarf even those of mighty Zardoth? He's talking about the Twin Towers, of course. They're in New York. And it goes, I was on my battlefield. Next I knew I stood amidst these minarets of blazing crystal. And since that you brought me here to slay me. But it is I whom called the Slayer. No, I dreamed you up, says the author. Look at this paper. And Star says, bah. Strange symbols mean nothing to Star. Now prepare to die, assassin. And the author screams, but I created you. I made you a hero. You can't just murder me in cold blood. And Star's logic aside, he goes, and who would dare call me a murderer, wizard, when I kill only to save my own life? And then he strikes the author down, and you get these 2 pages here. Just some really cool panel work, especially down here, the way it's just going across the scenes. And Zardoth, that's a city. Star is fighting for his life for the author. If that script gets handed in, he'll end up dying. So the author is now dead, and Zardoth, why do I keep saying that? Star the Slayer wakes up on his homeland. And his minstrel Morrow is there. He says, do you hear my words, my lord? It is I, Morrow, your faithful minstrel. And he goes, hey, good Morrow. But how did I return here? When, mere moments ago, I slew my most deadly foe in a strange and far-off land. And Morrow says, nay, my lord, you have lain here those long minutes past, while the evil troll lies dead and paled upon this very plain. And then they're looking back over the city, and Star is telling Morrow, for I have dreamed a dream, a vision of cities of glass and gleaming metal, a world where I fought my greatest, most fateful battle for my very soul itself. And Morrow says, but you won, my lord, you won. Tell me of the stream that I may compose a song of it. And in closing, he says, perhaps I shall, minstrel, one day. Now come, for the city awaits its rightful king. And it says, and Star, the Slayer, did return upon his silver-spired palace. There did rule wisely and justly till the end of his days, and they were many. The Chronicles of Zardoth. And then we have our final page. And you can see some parallels with this story to Conan #1 with the time travel. Conan getting a glimpse of the cities of the future. And just, there was a lot going on in this issue. The author was kind of like a Robert E. Howard, right? Because when Robert E. Howard talked about writing Conan, or writing in general, it took him on like a fever. And he had to sit there and pound out the story and get it done. And they had a cool presence of mind, Roy Thomas, to put that in there as part of that author, which I thought was cool and a good nod to Robert E. Howard himself. But a great introduction and tryout for Conan the Barbarian. And then when you see issue 1 and Conan looks exactly like that Star the Slayer, you already knew where they got it from. You knew Barry Windsor Smith was just being tested for the book to see if he could accomplish it, to see what he was capable of. Gratefully for all of us, he passed all his tests with flying colors. His art was fantastic. The way he told a story and moved the plot along through his art was great, coupled with Roy Thomas's words. And the rest is history. But if you guys have never read this, what did you think of that story? What do you think of Star the Slayer, the prototype of Conan the Barbarian? It's a fun book. You can find more information on Conan 1 and Roy Thomas's views on the Chamber of Darkness in the Barbarian Life, and I'll put a picture of that over there, from a book written by Roy Thomas. He did 3 of them. Great books if you're a Conan fan. They break each issue down in the story. He gives you a little backstory of what was going on with each issue that he wrote. So you can sit there with the Barbarian Life, and before you read, like, say, Conan 50, you can read about the behind the scenes of Conan 50. It's only a couple pages, and then go right to it. Great stuff. But guys, that's it for today. If you would be so kind, please throw a like on the video. Share it if you feel the need to. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. And until next time, keep it casual. Attention all, use channel sponsor Rogue Trader at theroguetraderutah.com and my code, keep it casual, for 10% off your comic cleaning and pressing needs. Remember, when submitting your books to be graded, use a trusted professional.